Hello and welcome. It's Orna Ross here of the Alliance of Independent Authors, and a very sunny afternoon in London. And I'm here with Joanna Penn, who will tell you the date because I don't know.
Yes, I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com, and I'm looking at the date. It's the 28th of October. I feel that way. I think authors, full-time authors are just like, and creatives and other people who don't work on a calendar, we do lose track of days.
I definitely have weeks like that, and this has been one of them. It could be, I hardly know the year, never mind the month.
Oh, busy times, busy times. Well, we'll just do some introductions. I'm celebrating and I'm just coming out of writing zone. I finished my draft of Gates of Hell this morning, and so I've got my print out here. It's printed, which is what I do at the end of my first draft, and very excited about that. So
That's
celebrating.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm really happy because I find first draft really difficult. So, no, I'm changing my mindset. I find first draft so easy and it just flows and I love it. So anyway, I'm quite happy. I've had a good morning.
That's great. It's fantastic, and well done you, because that's. Have you just hit a personal best there in terms of speed?
Yeah, and I have. If we have time, I'll come back to Dean Wesley Smith's productivity course. But here's my calendar for people who want to see it. Can you see all my stickers?
That's really interesting.
Yeah. So basically, I bought myself a pack of stickers, like you do for children, and I've got colourful ones now. And it used to be if I did over 1,000 words, I got a sticker. Now I have to get over 2,000 words, and then I get a sticker.
It's amazing. Isn't it amazing the things we do? I mean, you and I have talked about this, the whole place of play in the process, trying to sort of not take ourselves too seriously.
Yeah, that's been my big problem, and now I'm just like, okay, cliche city, it doesn't matter.
Just get it finished, and then we can go back.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So anyway, that's kind of my that's a big update for me. Also, excitingly for people, the Indie Author Power Pack, which I've announced, David Goffrin's just announced. Basically, it's my book, How to Market a Book, updated. David's Let's Get Digital, and Write, Publish, Repeat by Johnny B. Truen and Sean Platt. All available, 99 cents, really good deal. It's on pre-order right now. It launches next week, November 3rd. So that's aimed at, NaNoWriMo, but also David's just put on his blog, aiming for the nonfiction New York Times list. So we'll see how that goes. Fingers crossed.
Well, you did very well, of course, the last time with a box set on the NYT list. So let's hope this one does the same.
Yeah. So tell us what you've been up to since we last talked.
We were talking about website, and I'm in website land in a big way. I've just kind of revamped my own website and working my way through that, and just changing. It's 5 years since I first kind of started blogging and started this whole jag very gently, dipping my toe gingerly in the water back in 2008. And it's just kind of grown so much and changed. So I just felt that my website had got to a point, actually for the last year, I just didn't really go there because I didn't know what I wanted to do or how I wanted it to reflect me now. So finally got something together in terms of structure so that I can talk about the three kind of things that are really important to me, which is creative writing, creative publishing, and creative living, and how they sort of integrate and work together. So that's been good. And then, of course, the Alliance website, we were also working really hard on, and people are saying, how is it taking so long? Eventually what happened with us is that we have had to manually, because we're changing over to a completely different system, we've had to manually go through every single account. It's been such fun. Three of us here just matching data, and we're over that stage now. So now we're into pretty much content and stuff like that. I'm hoping to launch the new website on the 20th of November. And all going well, and we're going to have some really good, interesting services that we're not kind of talking about just yet, because I know they're going to excite you all. You know, a lot of things that we've been looking at and wanting to do that we couldn't do with the old site. And yeah, so very much lying low, but all very interesting sort of reevaluation, looking again. And it's something that happens, I think, every so often, is that you come to a place where you realise, oh, things have changed, and the message I'm putting out into the world is actually not at all where I am now, and you have to go back and kind of regroup, and that's very much where I've been for the past month or so.
Yeah, you didn't make it easy doing both your personal site and the Alliance at the same time.
Well, of course, that wasn't intentional. This whole thing with the data completely threw us. So the ALLi site was supposed to be done before the other one even got started. Now the other one is finished, and we're still on the ALLi site. But, you know, the best laid plans, you just get on and do the day's work, and, you know, go again tomorrow. It's, you know, it's not a patient lying on a table who's going to die. We just keep going until it's done.
Yeah, and I think all of this is really good for people to know about, which is why we share what's going on, because, you know, having a major redesign of your website is similar. And I've been thinking about the writer's voice, which everybody hears about at the beginning. Often when you go to all the writers' conferences, you read all the books, you know, you often, before you've written your first book, you're hearing about this elusive writer's voice. And I'm actually really feeling that I'm only just finding mine now after, you know, 5 years blogging. I think blogging has revolutionized my writing, and, you know, just freeing up, and just writing this first draft. Partly it's just that I'm relaxing into my voice and accepting, you know, I've said to you before, I just can't stop writing about demons, and now I'm just relaxing and allowing myself to write that stuff. Just, okay, fair enough. You know, I love Stephen King, that's the way I'm going, we'll just let it all hang out. And that writer's voice, the same as the writer's website and the brand, you just can't get this stuff in one go, and you will change.
Absolutely. Similarly, that I, you know, am getting into my voice for the first time, and in the sense of, I've always felt that across fiction, non-fiction, and poetry, it's almost been like 3 different voices nearly, and in my work life and in my writing life, almost like there were 2 sides. And I feel that for the first time in my writing life, all of that is integrating in, and it feels very satisfactory. It's not quite at the level where it's visible in the work yet, but I know it's happening, and it's a very nice kind of feeling. And then I know that, again, probably in another number of months' time, you have to go off in a different direction again, because I think that's the thing, we have to keep challenging ourselves. That's the way it just unfolds. So it's nice to recognize when things are settling a little and you're at a little plateau, to stop and say, yay, this feels good.
Yeah, and then move on. Exactly. So do we have any live questions, or should we move straight into one of our...
Yes, I'm not seeing any questions coming through, but folks, if you do have questions, please do let us have them, and we shall answer them as best we can. Hopefully we'll be able to answer them here in the show. If not, we'll take it away and get an answer for you. So do feel free to send them through. But I think we have some that were sent through.
Yeah. So let's start. We actually have quite a few different things to talk about. Let's start off with a common question we're getting at the moment, which is about Ingram and CreateSpace on the print side of things. And you're far more of an expert about print than me, so you can take that one.
Sure. This is a question that just comes up every single month. Should I use CreateSpace for print, or should I use Ingram Spark for print? And the advice that we're giving people is to use both. Jim Matteo has done a good analysis of both services, and where, you know, each has pros and cons. You know, one is better for certain things and the other is better for other things. But the wonderful thing is that now you don't actually have to choose between them. So the way to do it is, on your CreateSpace Amazon account, opt in for everything relating to Amazon, but opt out for expanded distribution, and then use Ingram Spark for expanded distribution. Why? The reason being that Amazon actually uses Ingram for expanded distribution, and therefore you're doing better by going directly to Ingram. But secondly, Ingram has a better relationship in general with bookstores than CreateSpace. A number of bookstores actually won't stock CreateSpace books, or there are difficulties around the ISBN or whatever. So do both. Use Amazon for Amazon Land and use Ingram Spark for expanded distribution. So it's a simple question, but it keeps coming up. So just to
and one follow-up question on that, because I had an author who asked me, if somebody has already gone the full expanded distribution with CreateSpace, can they then uncheck those boxes?
Yes.
And then go to Ingram?
Yes, you just go back in and uncheck. It takes a little while to go through the system. But go back, and everything takes a while to go through the system, so that by the time you're kind of de-published on the Amazon front, you'll be up and running on the Ingram front. Also, just to say that Alliance members get a discount on Ingram Spark, both in terms of their setup fee and various other fees. So do go through the badge on the blog, and if you are a member of the Alliance.
Fantastic. Okay, so we have a question from Karen. I would like to hear answers about the pricing of audiobooks. What are typical real prices by format? I presume, I don't know whether she means digital versus like CDs or something. And why do the prices set by publishers get so drastically ignored? So just from my perspective as someone who does both, so I do ACX, and I sell direct from my own site. And I actually had an email from not a potential customer who said the price of your audiobook is too high. So on my own website. Now what's happened there, I think, is if you go and buy a book on Audible, the price differs depending on whether you're a member and you pay a monthly subscription, you get it for free or very cheap. Or you can pay for the whole book up front, which is more expensive. They can range between like $10 all the way up to $35. I think that would probably be a good range. I mean, they are more expensive, but then you think that most books will take you between 4 and 24 hours. Like if you listen to Game of Thrones by George R.R. Martin, you're going to be in for like a 24-hour listen. So it's actually really good value. So I think, and what I've priced Business for Authors, which I read myself, it's 6 hours of me talking, which obviously everybody wants, and I've priced it at $24.99 US, which I think is fair price for a non-fiction business book that's going to give you actionable value. So I'm not willing to change that price. I think that's fine, and that's another reason I decided not to sell it on ACX, because they heavily discount, and an author may end up with very little money, and you don't have any control over that price. That's part of publishing on ACX. You don't have that pricing ability. Do you have anything to add on that, Orna?
Not really, except that I suppose Audible, the way in which Audible treats author publishers is very like the way Amazon treats trade publishers, if for print and for ebooks. So the terms and conditions that we get, particularly not just Amazon but all the platforms around ebooks as self-publishers are exceptionally good. We do much better, doing things that way than the traditional trade way. It's so much so that some of the smaller indie publishers now are actually choosing to self-publish, as it were, or using KDP and other notionally self-publishing platforms to publish their books because the terms are so much better. So I think Audible is much more like, the control just isn't there. The control is in the hands of the retailer. And there's a whole exclusivity thing and so on. So, there's no doubt that they are the supreme distributor of audiobooks online. They just do it extremely well. It's where so many people go to get their audiobooks, so you're going to want to be there. But I think, again, it's that whole thing of having enough books where you can have different strategies for different books depending on the nature of the project, which yours is just a perfect example of that.
And I mean, you definitely need a platform to sell your own audiobooks, and I wouldn't do it for fiction. I love ACX for fiction, but for non-fiction, I think I might as well. So yeah, it really depends on what the author is doing, Karen. Okay, so the next question we have is about author ethics. We've seen a few things in the publishing news about authors kind of hunting down reviewers, and even to the point of getting their mailing address, physical address, and basically authors turning into trolls, which it to me is just awful and something we should never ever do. Like our whole thing is about respect of the reader, respect of each other, respect to everybody. You know, let's just be nice. Is it that difficult? So Orna, do you want to talk a bit about author ethics and where the lines are?
Yeah, it's something that, you know, we had on the back burner. Jane Steen, one of our author members, wrote a fantastic piece for the Self-Publishing Advice blog a while back about this whole issue. And it starts, of course, there's the obvious things like buying reviews. Now, when I'm talking about author ethics here, I'm not just talking about self-publishing writers, it's across the board. So things like buying reviews and pretending they've come from readers, clearly unethical, clearly being done by huge numbers of authors. Yeah. But we've definitely, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen things go out of control to the extent that here in the UK, some writer who got a 1-star review on Goodreads travelled from the south of England up to Scotland, where the reviewer lived, stalked them out, found out where they live, work and shop, followed them into the supermarket, hit her over the back of the head with a bottle of wine, and she was concussed and had to. So it's gone way beyond just even verbal abuse.
I didn't know that. That's awful. I just didn't even want to read the article. I just stay away from it. I think it pollutes your brain.
It absolutely does, and I think, you know, very bad energy, but somebody needs to kind of step in there and say, look, this is a minority, and also to have some sort of way in which you can, you know, that readers can know, and book bloggers who are, you know, so important to us writers, can trust that, you know, the writers that they're dealing with, and that they know who they're dealing with, and so on. So we're looking at possibly the bookseller and Future Book conference is coming up in November, and they have a big ideas panel, and we had sort of one idea we're going to present, but it looks like we're actually going to present the idea of an ethical author kind of protocol, a bit like the Kyoto Principles the countries sign up for, completely voluntary, so we wouldn't police it, but any author who felt that they wanted to sign up for the code that we're putting in place could do so, and could, you know, get a badge and put it on their website and say that they were, you know, that they were ethical, and in a way kind of distinguish themselves from this kind of behaviour. So we're talking to also the Society of Authors, the Writers Guild in the States, and the trade published author societies as well, to get their support for it, because this isn't just a self-publishing writer's problem, though it is being very much painted that way, and that's one of the reasons that we want to step in there and say, hold on a second, it's not just, this is about ethical behaviour, it's not about how you publish, and it's really important that somebody gets in there and makes that distinction, because we have a lot of book bloggers, a lot of the big ones, the important ones, saying, I won't deal with self-published work anymore.
Yeah.
And they're scared. They're actually scared. It's crazy.
It is. And I mean, when you talk about it that way, you can also say, well, maybe some of these publishers might like to sign up to that. I mean, look at the way the whole Hachette thing has been spun, and, you know, reporters, let's get the media to sign up to some ethics. I mean, it's
absolutely, that's a really good point,
doesn't it?
No, it happens everywhere, and that's a really good point, and that's one of the reasons that we've kind of rushed this along, and it's one of the reasons that we're keen to present it at Future Book, because that will be presenting it to the industry more than, you know, to authors. I mean, we'll obviously take it out to authors then, but to speak to the industry, to say that this is an industry-wide issue. I mean, when I was published, trade published back in the mid-2000s, The day my book came out, instantly there were 8 reviews up there, so much so that I wrote to people and said, you know, people who I had given the book to privately, and said, did you put a review on Amazon? No, the publisher had organised that. I went into the local bookstore, and the week before the book came out, it was on a shelf up at the top at #1, but the book hadn't even gone on sale. So essentially, the author or the publisher had bought that space. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with buying product placement and, you know, putting a book up front near the door and paying for that. I don't have a problem with that, but I do have a problem, and I had a problem then, and I said it to the publisher. I do have a problem with something that misleads the reader to think, this is a popular book, I should buy it, before it's had a chance to prove itself. So, you know, there's an awful lot to talk. I mean, it's a bit of a hot potato, but anyway, we're going to try and
it's a very hot potato, and it's so funny because actually this relates to a question that Henry has sent in. Well, it's kind of a compliment and a question. Henry says, I'm fairly new to ALLi, but I'm really impressed by the sense of camaraderie amongst the members and generosity. This isn't something I've encountered when dealing with traditional publishing, nor is it something I've encountered in 20 years running my own business, where one is constantly aware of competitiveness. What is, in your opinion, is the magic in a bottle that ALLi has managed to create that seems to have such a positive effect on its members? And I will answer before Orna does that this is down to what Orna creating, what Orna's ethics are, and why I'm friends with Orna, because that's the type of ethics I'm attracted to, and that's why we're not, you know, she suggested that we would, you know, this organization was going to happen. I was really keen, and I'm very scrupulously honest with everything I do and sharing everything that I do, and it's very important to me, and I know to you, Orna, to be this way. So I actually think that the ethics underlying ALLi are probably the reason why it has that kind of feeling. Now I've finished complimenting you. You can say your piece.
Blushing over here. You're very kind. You and Henry both. Thank you both. I think I have to say that I have been stunned by the fantastic camaraderie and the, you used to have a word called co-opetition.
Co-opetition, yeah.
Yeah, which doesn't, you know, I like that word because it acknowledges that we're all out in the marketplace and there are readers and so on, but we cooperate, we work together for each other. I mean, I'm only one member in ALLi in a way, you know, it really does rely on everybody helping to create that atmosphere, and you see it all the time, you know, if something arises in one of the forums and somebody's a little upset or, you know, struggling or doesn't know what to do next, people will actually just rush in to help, and yeah, it's fantastic. It makes this job an absolute joy every day of the week, but it is magic. I couldn't begin to kind of unpick it and say why it happens. It just it is that magic thing, and that is down to everybody who brings that attitude in, and I'm very grateful for it.
Well, I think, you know, we're being a bit woo-woo. You're more woo-woo than I am, but the energy you put out into the world is generally the energy you attract back. So, you know, I call it social karma, and, you know, I get attacked like many people, but I get very little of it compared to what I've heard other people, and I think that I'm relentlessly positive. I just turn off people who aren't positive as well. And I think probably ALLi is the same. We attract people who already are proactive and are willing to share and be generous. So I think you know, as long as that's the framework of the organization, which as long as this is your baby, it's gonna be, then, you know, I think it will stay that way. And of course you have to jump on things early if they start to go off the rails, but generally I think if you stay positive and you don't ever moan on Twitter or on blogs, or, you know, I really believe that, and life will stay more positive online.
I completely agree, and I think, I suppose, thinking about it, two other things are important. I think one is that we established ourselves very much as an organisation that was about ethics and excellence. So it was about producing great books, putting the reader at the centre of what we do, and doing it ethically. So that immediately turned away a whole load of people who wouldn't cooperate or are just out for themselves. So it does tend to attract the sort of writer who already is that kind of person. And the other thing I think that's really significant is that there is a fee. So people pay to be a member, and that means they value being a member. It's important to them. It's important enough to them to pay. So it has a very different atmosphere to forms that are free. So I think those two things are also key to why it works so well.
No, really good point. Okay, so that's a good thing to talk about. Right, one thing we mentioned last time that we were going to Frankfurt Book Fair, and we have been to Frankfurt Book Fair. From my point of view, I was totally overwhelmed. I've never been at such a big, overwhelming, crazy thing. I mean, convention or whatever it is. It was just much big. Everyone said, "Oh, it's so big," and I was like, "Yeah, but it's so big." And I found it very tiring, and I found the energy was, for me personally, was not as author, well, in fact, not at all author-centric as we have increasingly found London to be. So yeah, I guess I just didn't have such a brilliant time overall. I'm honest about this stuff. And that was partly my fault because I was very tired from speaking and stuff. But I just felt the energy was not as positive towards authors as other publishing conventions we've been to. So what was your experience of Frankfurt?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say that Frankfurt now feels very like London felt 5 years ago in that regard. In terms of being author centric, as you say. I mean, it was very expensive for anybody who was interested in self-publishing to attend, and I'm talking about the international side of it now. It is enormous. It's like 8 or 9 London book fairs all in one place, which is, you have to experience it to understand just how very big it is. On the one hand, that's a wonderful thing. I think the German book market is very interesting. The fact that books are still priced, quite highly there, that German people are so literate, buy so many books, and are very invested in their book industry. And Frankfurt particularly, I mean, to the degree that your book fair ticket gets you free transport for the week. I think that's just a lovely touch. And all the bookstores all around the city really go all out for that week and so on. In terms of self-publishing authors, I think for the German people who attended and who were just beginning to think about this, I think that the education that was there was very worthwhile. Very good starting year. The first year is always a little difficult. I think perhaps too many sessions and a few too many people in what were very short sessions meant that it was very much an introduction to all aspects of self-publishing, and perhaps they could do with having a few more in-depth sessions. Certainly for ALLi members, I think the value is in bringing the Rights Guide that PubMatch puts together for us, showing people our members' books, letting people know what our members are doing. That sort of thing is more valuable at Frankfurt than the actual education. Any one of our members could get up, I think, and do, the sort of education that we were seeing there. I don't think anybody necessarily, you always learn something, but I think, a few of our members did travel for it, and I think didn't feel that they learned a lot. They enjoyed the networking side of it more than the education part. But we have been talking to the organisers, and we have told them, our thoughts, and they're very open to hearing more about it. So I've no doubt but it will grow from this beginning, and in a few years' time, I think it'll be much more. It'll just kind of have caught up with where indies are. I mean, again, the independent author is a very sort of far-seeing animal, and we are in the main ahead of the curve, and it is taking time for people to catch up with where we're at and what we need. and that again is part of our role, is to let them know what that is. So yeah, I think next year I probably will attend again, and I would expect that it will be more relevant for our members.
I would say, you know, to anyone going to any fair, there was a particularly sad moment at one of the things where a lady put her hand up and said, we've come all the way from, you know, one guy from Japan and one from Australia and one from South Africa, and we haven't met any agents or anything, and they basically hadn't set up meetings before they'd arrived. And it was just like, and if you go to any of these events, you must set up meetings before you go, like probably a month before you go, because everyone's schedule, even if you wanted to, you know, have a meeting with me or Orna, I mean, you have to book these things because people have schedules that are like, you know, every 15 minutes. So I do want to say, you know, big shout out to Kobo Writing Life, who did some great stuff, and I spoke on their platform. Also met up with Nook Press and some people from Amazon KDP. So always good to meet the vendors at these things. I know you went and saw Google, didn't you? Google Play?
Yes, I'm trying to get Google to understand some of our needs a little bit better.
But this is the thing, it is worth going to these things if you have a strong agenda in mind and you want to make a relationship with somebody. I do find that, you know, if you meet people in person, you can have a much bigger impact than email. So there are very good reasons for going to these events. But as we said, sometimes it's very expensive. So, for example, you keep saying I should go to BEA, but it's blooming expensive.
Yes, and you do have to pick and choose. And I think one of the main reasons for going to Frankfurt for ALLi is the global dimension. So, you know, our whole strategy for 2015 is going global. We want to draw in from we've got members in all territories now, and we want them to start sharing their information and helping each other to sell books in different territories. That's our number one objective for next year. And Frankfurt is very useful for that because it is very, very, very global. I mean, people come from all over the world to Frankfurt. It is where most of the foreign rights sales deals are done. And so, you know, in terms of sort of reaching across the world, I think it is probably the best of the three big fairs, being London, Frankfurt and BEA, to my mind. So, you know, these are traditionally trade-centered fairs where people do business, you know, where publishers have traditionally done business with agents in the rights hall, and where they've done business with booksellers, retailers, and so on in the exhibition hall. It's really changing, and you can see that year on year it gets, you know, it's completely different. Authors are definitely becoming more central, and author services are becoming more central. So again, another very good thing for us at Frankfurt was seeing, you know, going around the exhibiting hall and various services that are now on offer, and some, you know, quite new and interesting tech companies who are in the space exploring what's possible around various things, and you know, just chatting to them and seeing what's happening technologically as well can be very interesting, because if you get some of these tools, it can really help you to sell more books. So
absolutely.
Yeah, so from the global dimension, I think Frankfurt is worthwhile.
Okay, have we got any live questions?
Nothing here that we haven't covered already.
No worries, I've got another couple here. So we've got also Henry has asked, I'm really interested to hear about your journey from non-fiction into fiction. What did you feel you learned from being a non-fiction author? Did it help or hinder the fiction process? Any commonalities? Etc., etc. So we both write fiction and non-fiction. From my perspective, I started with non-fiction. I never intended to write fiction, and you know, as I mentioned, the writer's voice earlier, I really only started to write fiction once I'd been blogging for 2 years and I relaxed into actually sharing writing in public, which I think is what blogging can really help you do, and getting that confidence. So for me, that process of I then had to basically learn, you learn to write the books in a very different way. I learned to write non-fiction first, which I actually think is a lot easier in a way when you write the way I do, as in you know, you're really sharing a lot of what you've learned yourself or your research in a quite a structured manner. So if you structure the table of contents, you can pretty much slot the information in and then edit it and craft it and things. But the structure, once you get the structure sorted, you just fill it in. Whereas fiction is a whole different thing, and you basically have to learn that from scratch. Things like dialogue, I mean, you don't ever write dialogue in any other situation, you know, unless you're writing something fictional, really. So in terms of the psychology side and the craft side and everything, I think writing fiction, you basically start again. The only thing that really carries across is the ability to get the work done, I suppose. The productivity issue of, okay, I know I can write 50,000 words or 100,000 words. I know I can do that. So I can do that again with fiction. I just have to learn a whole load of different processes. How about you, Orna? How does non-fiction and fiction work for you?
Yeah, it's interesting, and it's an interesting question. Thanks, Henry. I too started as a non-fiction writer, but I always wanted to write fiction. So I actually, when I was 14 or 15, I wanted to write the novel that eventually became After the Rising. I carried it around for an awful long time before I had the confidence to do it. So I started in journalism, actually, and you know, I think that was really good training in exactly the same sort of way as you're talking about blogging. You learn to sit down and write. You learn that you can, you know, you can produce. I mean, I got to the stage where if somebody said, give me 1,000 words on anything under the sun within 24 or 36 hours, I knew I could do that. But I came to a point where I actually had to stop and leave my freelance writing job in order to finish that novel. The two energies were just so contrary at that time. I needed what it took for me to learn to write fiction at all in the first place, and then the kind of fiction that I wanted to write just wasn't compatible with producing work at short notice and thinking with the kind of non-fiction brain. So I actually, you know, walked away from my job and found a different day job so I could write that novel, and went on to write a lot more fiction. And then out of that, started to write poetry as well. And it's like a whole other side of me got switched on. And it's definitely different in lots of ways. So while it is wonderful to know that you can write and put sentences together, it's so drastically different and draws on such different parts of yourself that, you know, I mean, I never regret anything, so I certainly wouldn't go back there and do it any differently. But I think if you want to be a novelist, and you see now it's different, if you want to be a novelist now, you can start writing fiction and you can put it out there and you can get your audience and you can, you know, get your feedback and all. None of that was possible when I started out. If I was starting out now, I definitely would just go on a fiction jag and become that person. But I also have this whole big sort of raft now of non-fiction that I also want to write. I want to kind of put my philosophy of life down into a group of books, and, you know, and how that underwrites the fiction and all the other things that I do. And now I find I can do both. So it's like having gone a non-fiction, now I've come back, and actually I find doing some non-fiction in between is I think you called it before, a palate cleanser, and I like that idea. So I just finished a spate of non-fiction, starting writing some fiction next Monday. In December I'll go back to doing some non-fiction. So, you know, it's working well together for me now.
Henry also asks, had you always intended to self-publish your fiction? And has your success with non-fiction helped you overcome the need for traditional validation of your work? Yeah, so for me, I never pitched. I started doing non-fiction as an entrepreneur, so I was never intending to go through that route. I got an agent once I'd been self-publishing for a while, so and that we went our separate ways anyway. So I never had any question about self-publishing, because I guess I'm just that type of person. It was not really about validation for me. It was about speed. about how fast things get done. I was just like, really? You want me to wait like 6 months or 2 years? Like, when I discovered that was how publishing worked, I was incredulous. And I knew that there's no way my attention span would still be focused on this particular project in 2 years' time. So I went ahead and self-published, and I still feel that way. Like, I have, absolutely, I love putting stuff out, quickly. I think it's really, really fun. Okay, so we haven't got long left. So what is happening this month?
Coming up for us is we will be launching that author ethics protocol at Future Book, finishing the website and launching the website, I hope, on the 20th. Have I said that already? On the 20th of November. And then, we have a few events. We have here in London, there is the Indie Author Fair, and Bike the Book we're doing a sort of an outing with, and also doing an evening on how to self-publish and do it right for the literary consultancy. So, but the most sort of widespread interesting event is next week. Just check the calendar for the exact date. I think it's the 5th, with Jim Kukral, who's now our marketing person, is going to talk about how to sell more books for the holiday season.
Oh, fantastic. So, Jim's a star. He's great, Jim. I love having Jim involved with like women like us as well, because Jim's like this big kind of gruff, burly guy who's been in marketing for like 25 years or something. He brings this brilliant kind of, and he's so super positive too. He's brilliantly positive guy. So that's really good. And obviously we've also got NaNoWriMo.
NaNoWriMo is coming. Just before I leave the marketing thing, we are looking at marketing now from 2 different perspectives. So our advice is Jim is kind of, I think of Jim as kind of big marketing, out wide, go for the big group and get as many people in as you can, and here you're very sort of big reach and marketing, but we're also going to be looking at sort of creating that small one-by-one audience, reaching out to one reader at a time and growing from the small seed up. So we're going to look at marketing from now on from both of those perspectives all the time, because I think there's room for both. We have a question here from Caroline. Should I blog? I don't know if we have time to go on that one. Do you have?
Yeah. We can do that quickly. Well, from my perspective, blogging changed my life. As I said, it freed my voice. I built a platform. I built a community around, I attracted a community. I met Orna, I met pretty much all my friends now I met because of my blog and Twitter. I was able to leave my job because of my blog, because of creating multiple income streams from my blog. Now, I've been blogging nearly 6 years, podcasting 4 years. I've written nearly 1,000 posts, 200 podcasts, several hundred videos, a lot of social media. So I'm not saying it's easy, and that's the thing. That's what you have to decide is, what is your business model, and is blogging going to serve that? So for me, I have speaking and other forms of income. If you just purely want to make money from writing fiction, we've seen lots of, and non-fiction, either or. We've seen a lot of authors recently who are making very good money without blogging, without building a platform, without doing anything like that. Steve Scott in the non-fiction space, and lots of authors in the fiction space. So realistically, there's no answer. You have to decide yourself what suits you, what suits your personality and your business model, basically.
Yeah, and also, I
just have to answer the door. You carry on.
Okay, I'll talk. You go answer the door. Don't you just love Google Hangouts on our live? I think, Caroline, seeing here that you are a novelist, and I think really when it comes to blogging, the main question you need to ask yourself is, do I enjoy it? Do I want to blog? I think the number one rule with anything is, don't do it because you think it's going to get you sales if you don't enjoy it. So the number one thing is, would I love to blog? And if I would, what would I love to blog about? So if you're going to be, if you are a novelist, an aspiring novelist, so you want to publish fiction, don't start a blog about writing fiction. There are too many of those. That is a very crowded space. And, you know, don't just blog about your own experience. If you are going to blog, it needs to be something that I think that, because the blogosphere is now, you know, there are so many millions of blogs, you've got to be offering something of value to somebody. You want to feel, there are a lot of people, a lot of writers starting blogs, putting a lot of energy into them and then letting them go because it takes a lot of time and trouble. So you want to have value for you in the sense that you really enjoy doing it and you get something from it. So it's either improving your writing voice or, you know, serving a publishing function for you. So a pleasure function for you, and then serving a function for your reader as well. So you need an angle, I think. You need to decide on a distinct sort of approach as to what you're going to write about, you know, and be interesting. Be interesting. There are a lot of blogs starting that are just basically about, you know, I did this, I did that, and it's really like, nah, who cares? So there's a lot to think about before you start. Do you have any recommendations, Joe, or do you have a post yourself about whether fiction writers should blog?
I have a number of them, but you know, for me, I know a lot of fiction authors who are making good money just writing more books, who don't blog. But then I mentioned Dean Wesley Smith earlier. Dean's doing this great thing, this writing in public that he does now. He blogs every day about what he's done in the day and includes how many words he's written on his project. So he manages to write, you know, 1,000 plus to 2,000 words a day of his next book. Plus he writes a blog post to be accountable to people who follow him. Now, for my fiction, I've got two sites, the Creative Pen for writers and JF Pen, which is my fiction. And I've thought, should I do JF Pen? You know, what am I doing there? And for me, one of the most rewarding things is connection, the peer network. So I'm doing author interviews on JF Pen, both with video and with text-based interviews. I do list posts, like I've got one coming up, which is, you know, 10 books with demons in for Halloween. You know, stuff like that. You know, that's cool. Stuff that I read. So I might even do some more video blogging for JF Pen about my research and that type of stuff. So again, I mean, you could start a podcast. There's lots of things you could do that are fun, that serve you, that you enjoy, you know, and also can potentially add to your business. So, but, you know, like Orna said, there's a lot of decisions to make. But I would say also I've had like 6 blogs in total, you know, I've got 2 now. So I've tried a lot of things and let them fall by the wayside when they didn't work. You know, we all try stuff. So don't be afraid to start something and give it up. There's no problems doing that. That's absolutely fine. You'll get there eventually. Like we said, we all redesign ourselves, we redesign our brand, and we've kind of come full circle in our discussion.
Yes, that seems to be the theme of the day. So yeah, just finally on NaNoWriMo, I'm going to use it to finish my Yates book, which is delivering to the proofie at the end of the month. Yeah, and you're going to use it to... I'm
going to write a novella, because I'm going to also do the second draft of this. So I've got the second draft and a novella. So I will do 50,000 words, just possibly not all on the same project. I'm not sure if that counts, but you know. But I do, if anyone wants to give it a go, you know, nanowrimo.org, National Novel Writing Month. It's going to be really fun and always worth doing. That's how I started my first novel, at least. So I'll always love it.
And again, talking about camaraderie, which has been a theme of today as well, it's just amazing. And they are now kind of setting up outposts around the world. So it started off as National Novel Writing Month in the USA, but it is now also, there are London groups meeting, and I know there are groups meeting in other places. So yeah, if you want to write a novel, if you want to finish a novel, if you want to write 50,000 words, throw yourself in there and see what happens. Nothing to lose, really.
No, exactly. So our next call is on Tuesday the 25th of November.
Wow. Okay.
At 4 p.m. London time. So please come and join us live if you would like to, or you can add questions in the Alliance of Independent Authors Facebook page, or send Orna or I a message. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you again next month.
That's great. Thanks for listening, everyone, and thank you, Joe.
Bye.
Bye.